Now we have to talk about Cynthia Nixon from Sex and the City. You might know her as Miranda Hobbs. She's the redhead. She used to be straight in the 90s. She dated Steve. We all love Steve on the original Sex and the City. And then she started dating this non-binary character named Che Diaz. Now she's a lesbian. She can't figure out her identity, who she is. She basically left her entire family behind to go be a late in life lesbian. So good for you, Miranda Hobbs on Sex and the City. But apparently Cynthia Nixon is just as woke and ridiculous in real life. So she is walking the walk and talking the talk. She's a method actor. She is a method actor. So she's a woke, ridiculous person on stage, and she's also woke and ridiculous off stage. So Cynthia Nixon's child, named Seth Moses, who is an observant Jewish person, has decided to do a hunger strike for Palestine. This person is fasting for Hamas, for Gaza, for Palestine. This is part of Jewish Voices for Peace. And this person is also a self-proclaimed Jewish anti-Zionist. So Cynthia Nixon's child also used to be a girl and now identifies as a boy. So Cynthia Nixon, you did a great job as a parent. Your child is transgender, can't figure out who they are, what identity they want to be. Now they're fasting for Gaza, Palestine, and Hamas. Good for you, sweetheart. You did a great job raising your child. I am so sick of all of this fasting for Hamas, fasting for Palestine. I remember this about 18 months ago. This was really going on at Princeton and Harvard and all these higher education universities. And then we found out the kids were going to Chick-fil-A. They were like fasting in shifts. They were doing rotating hunger strikes, which isn't really how a hunger strike works. You guys aren't, the next Mahatma Gandhi. Normally, when you do a hunger strike, you actually do the hunger portion of the strike. You don't do a hunger strike for 4 hours, and then you go get lunch. You go get lunch at Sarah Beth's, and then you come back and you do a little bit more of a hunger strike. That is not how it works. But Cynthia Nixon's child apparently feels compelled to do this because I think a lot of young people are devoid of purpose in your life. They don't have family values. They don't have a lot of hobbies. They don't know what their passion is. And so a lot of young people we're seeing, they're tying themselves to these social movements, whether it's Ukraine, Zelensky, Palestine, Hamas, Gaza. They're tying themselves to the transgender cult. That is what a lot of young people are doing. They can't figure out what they want to do in life, so they start messing around with their identity. Well, I might be born in the wrong body. Well, I actually might hate my own country. Well, I might go join this hunger strike. Instead of actually going and getting a job and building a career and building a family, they tie themselves to these social movements, and it changes every 6 months. So good for you, Cynthia Nixon. But we also have to talk about this trend in Hollywood where we have so many celebrities with transgender children. We've all seen it on social media. It seems like everybody these days has a trans kid in Hollywood. You've got Cynthia Nixon, you've got Cher, Jennifer Lopez, Charlize Theron, Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union. You've got Robert De Niro, Heather Dubrow, who's a reality star, Jamie Lee Curtis, Naomi Watts, Annette Bening, and Warren Beatty have a son, Steven, who came out as trans in 2012, Sigourney Weaver, and actress Busy Phillips. So everybody in Hollywood now has a transgender child. I don't know what's going on in Hollywood. Maybe it's the water. Maybe it's the fact that they push trans ideology and gender ideology onto all of these kids, especially through social media. But we have to discuss this phenomenon because it is statistically impossible that this many people in such a small area have trans or non-binary kids who want to mess with their identities and can't figure out who they are. And when it comes to Dwayne Wade's son becoming a girl, what happened to Black Lives Matter? If Black Lives really mattered, would you allow your son to chemically castrate himself or to change his gender so he can never reproduce again? Is that Black Lives Matter? No, you guys are a bunch of hypocrites. And it's because in Hollywood, they don't place an emphasis on family, faith, the nuclear family, or having anything in your life that really gives you meaning. So they glom onto these things like gender ideology, trans ideology. But in Hollywood, it's become the new trend to have a transgender child. It's like getting an Hermes Birkin bag. People used to wait in line. They were expensive. It's the new hot trend to have a transgender child. If you don't have a trans kid in Hollywood, oh my God, you can't come to the cocktail parties. You aren't really cool and down with the get down unless you have a trans or non-binary child. I actually think a non-binary kid might be one step above trans. It's like high-waisted jeans, bell-bottom pants. It's like, highlights in your hair. It's a new trend in Hollywood. Everybody has to have a transgender child. But I would respect these celebrities more if when their young children came to them at 8, 9, 12, you name it, and said, I feel like I was born in the wrong body. If the parents said, you know what? Interesting. Let's go see someone and talk about that. Let's wait and see and watch until you're 18 years old and can make an adult decision for yourself. I still think 18 is a little too young, but let's wait and see. But all of these celebrities, because they want to seem like they're woke and accepting and they're all in support of LGBTQIA plus XYZ R2D2, they want to be allies. Everybody wants to be an ally, so they won't put the foot down on their children. Okay, if you were real parents, you wouldn't let your young kids be injected with hormones and puberty blockers that are going to make them sterile for the rest of their lives. You understand what I'm saying? That is when I would respect you more. But all of these folks in Hollywood have transgender children. And it's very interesting that such a concentration in one area all happen to have trans kids. It's almost like Hollywood is pushing trans ideology onto young people. And I was thinking this morning, before we came up here to film this episode, when you look at a lot of movies in Hollywood now, the families are a mess. There are no movies or shows in Hollywood where you have family values, where the family gets together at the end of the night and has dinner, where the father is in the home. Look at how many Disney movies. Disney, who owns ABC, who owns The View, who is very, very liberal. How many Disney movies do we see where the father is gone or the mother is gone, where you don't have two parents in the household? And we know from statistic research, when you grow up with two parents in the household, you are much less likely to commit crimes, to have mental health issues. These are facts. You understand what I'm saying? And so when you look at all these films and TV shows coming out of Hollywood, the kids are on drugs, the kids are strung out, they're messing with their identity, they're saying they're non-binary, they're chopping their hair off, they're getting mastectomies at 16, 17 years old. That is what's happening in these movies and TV shows in Hollywood. And then you can't really scratch your head and say, well, why are all these kids questioning their own identities? Why are all these kids feeling like, oh, I might be born in the wrong body? I truly believe if young people whose brains weren't sponges weren't constantly inundated now with trans ideology and all of this on social media, I don't think they would ever second guess themselves. When I was growing up and I knew that I was gay, it's not because I had gay stuff shoved in front of me on every single TV show. There were very few TV shows with anybody who was gay, especially a good representation of a gay character. There wasn't a ton of social media. We didn't have TikTok. We didn't have Instagram. It's just sort of coming about. But Facebook, there was nothing to really find that made you feel affirmed in the fact that you were gay. I just knew I was gay. Now, if you're a gay dude like me, if you're a normal gay, you're considered boring. You're considered a normie. You're not part of that club. You got to be like a non-binary, pansexual, polysexual cyborg to be interesting nowadays. And I talk about this often with some of my gay friends. If you are just a normal gay guy, they see you as a threat. Oh, you cannot be part of that group, and I don't want to be a part of the group anyway. I don't want to be a part of anyone's little community. I'm a grown-ass man and an adult, and I have a lot going on in my life, okay? I don't need to be a part of any little small community. But these folks in Hollywood, they think it's okay to trans their children, to push gender ideology onto their children, to inject them with hormones and puberty blockers, and I would respect more folks in Hollywood if they spoke up. And I know there are folks in Hollywood who agree with me, but they're too scared to come out and say it because they don't want to lose roles. They don't want to lose jobs. They don't want to seem, anti-LGBTQ. It is not anti-trans or anti-LGBTQ to say you don't want kids to be shot up with hormones or that you don't want men and women's sports. But this is what they do to try and silence you. If you speak up and say, I don't want men and women's sports, I don't want kids shot up with hormones, they say you're transphobic, you're bigoted, you're xenophobic. This is what they do to try to shut down the conversation. It's not going to work for me. It's not going to work for me. I am impervious to all of those attacks and attempts. So, Busy Phillips, Sigourney Weaver, Naomi Watts, Cynthia Nixon, Dwayne Wade, we wish you well with all of your trans kids. Your kids are the actual victims in the situation. If you think about it, the young kids who are coming to them at 12, 13, 14 and saying they're trans and they're being medically transitioned by these ridiculous liberal socialist doctors, the kids are the victims. The kids are the ones I actually think need help and need to be taken away from these parents. I think sort of the opposite of the Tim Walz model. In Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz believes if you don't affirm your kid's gender and allow them to transition, they can be taken from you and become children of the state. I think the opposite. I think if a parent is shooting their kid up with hormones and transitioning them, that kid should probably be taken from the home because you are not a real parent if you're allowing your kid to be dismembered or disfigured or impacted permanently for the rest of their lives by medical procedures and interventions. I think that's very, very, very bizarre, but there's a whole medical lobby pushing for all of this. It's being pushed through entertainment in Hollywood. A lot of these people are a party to it.